Before the emergency, everyone believed she was just another quiet woman buried behind stacks of paperwork. She arrived early every morning, spoke only when someone asked her a question, and disappeared into the background before anyone noticed she was there. The young pilots walked past her without a second glance. To them, she was invisible. But hidden behind those reading glasses was a woman whose name had once echoed through military hangars across the country, a pilot so legendary that instructors still whispered her call sign to frightened rookies during survival training. Then, one ordinary afternoon, everything changed. An F/A-18 high above the mountains suddenly lost both engines. The cockpit filled with warning alarms as the fighter became nothing more than a heavy piece of metal falling through the sky. Every second brought the pilot closer to death. Air traffic controllers searched desperately for a solution, but no one had the experience to save him. Then the terrified pilot grabbed his radio and shouted words that froze the entire control room. "Forget the manuals. Find call sign Phantom. Only Phantom can get me home." The room fell completely silent, because nobody there knew that the legend they were searching for was already inside the building. Before we begin this incredible story, comment below where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories like this. Every morning, Lena Carter arrived at Hawthorne Air Operations Center before the first pilots even stepped onto the runway. She always parked in the same corner, carried the same faded leather folder, and quietly walked into the small records office without saying much to anyone. While fighter jets thundered into the morning sky outside, she spent her days checking flight records, correcting radar reports, and organizing maintenance files that most people never bothered to read. The younger officers barely noticed she was there. To them, she was simply Ms. Carter, the quiet middle-aged woman who preferred paper notes over computer screens and drank her coffee long after it had gone cold. Some joked that she belonged to another generation. Others thought she had never done anything exciting in her life. No one imagined she had ever worn a flight helmet. Lena never corrected them. She had spent 7 peaceful years making sure nobody asked about her past. The silence suited her. She smiled politely, finished her work, and watched ambitious young pilots chase the dreams she had left behind. Every medal she had ever earned, every photograph from her flying days, and every newspaper clipping had disappeared into an old storage box hidden in her attic. To everyone at the base, she was ordinary. But legends don't stop being legends just because they stop talking about themselves. And before this ordinary day was over, the quiet woman everyone overlooked would be forced to reveal the identity she had spent years trying to bury. Years before anyone called her Ms. Carter, the military knew her by another name. Captain Lena Carter was one of the Air Force's most gifted fighter pilots, trusted with missions that were never discussed outside secure briefing rooms. She first mastered the F-15 before being selected for advanced experimental flight programs that only a handful of pilots would ever experience. In every squadron she joined, one story spread faster than the rest. If a mission looked impossible, send Lena. She had an incredible ability to stay calm when everyone else panicked. While other pilots relied on instinct alone, Lena seemed to think several moves ahead. She could read changing winds, predict an aircraft's behavior before warning systems reacted, and recover from situations that should have ended in disaster. Her fellow pilots joked that enemy radar could never hold on to her for long. She would disappear from their screens, then suddenly reappear exactly where nobody expected. That's how she earned the call sign Phantom. Young pilots dreamed of flying beside her. Veteran commanders trusted her with the missions no one else wanted. Flight instructors used recordings of her landings to teach precision, discipline, and absolute control. To many, she wasn't just an exceptional pilot. She was the standard every new generation hoped to reach. But legends aren't created without sacrifice. During a classified test mission over rough coastal waters, Lena was evaluating a newly upgraded fighter when disaster struck. Without warning, a hidden mechanical failure spread through the aircraft's control system. At nearly the same moment, a violent storm rolled across the sky, turning an already dangerous test into a nightmare. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit. Flight controls became sluggish. Hydraulic pressure dropped faster than anyone thought possible. The aircraft began falling toward a crowded fishing area below. Lena had only seconds to choose. She could eject immediately and save herself, or stay inside long enough to steer the crippled jet away from the innocent people beneath her. She never hesitated. Ignoring every survival instinct, she kept fighting the controls until the aircraft cleared the boats. Only then did she pull the ejection handle. The explosion threw her into the freezing ocean with tremendous force. Rescue teams found her alive, but barely. Her spine had suffered devastating injuries, and after months of surgeries and rehabilitation, military doctors delivered the news she already feared. She would walk again. She would live, but she would never fly another fighter jet. That single sentence ended the career of one of the greatest pilots the Air Force had ever produced. Lena accepted the decision without arguing, packed away her flight suit, locked her medals out of sight, and quietly disappeared into a small office where nobody knew the woman they passed every day had once ruled the skies. Tuesday began like every other training day. The sky above Hawthorne Air Base was bright, the weather was calm, and 4 F/A-18 fighters lifted off one after another for a routine formation exercise over the nearby mountain range. Nothing about the morning suggested that, within minutes, the base would face one of the most terrifying emergencies in its history. Inside the operations center, Lena quietly reviewed maintenance reports while the younger staff chatted about weekend plans. Someone laughed over a cup of coffee. Another officer complained about paperwork. The atmosphere was relaxed. Then, at exactly 10:42 a.m., the emergency frequency exploded with a piercing alarm that cut through every conversation. A frightened voice burst across the speakers. "Hawthorne Control, this is Falcon 2. Mayday, Mayday. I've lost both engines. Total power failure. I'm gliding with no thrust." The room froze. Coffee cups stopped halfway to people's mouths. Conversations died instantly. Every pair of eyes turned toward the radar screens. The aircraft was more than 14,000 feet above the ground, but its altitude was disappearing with every passing second. The young controller on duty, Ryan Ellis, had trained for emergencies like this countless times in simulators. But training and reality were two completely different worlds. His hands trembled as he grabbed the microphone. "Falcon 2, remain calm. Report your altitude, heading, and airspeed." The answer came back immediately, filled with panic. "Altitude 13,600 feet, heading 215. Controls are getting heavy. I've got nothing. Both engines are dead. I don't think I can make it back." Ryan stared helplessly at the emergency handbook lying open beside him. Page after page explained procedures. None of them explained how to save a powerless fighter jet falling from the sky. His supervisor leaned over the radar display, calculating distances as fast as he could. The numbers weren't encouraging. Even if the pilot did everything perfectly, he probably didn't have enough altitude. Behind the glass wall, Lena looked up from her paperwork for the first time all morning. She hadn't touched a fighter jet in years, but the desperate tone in the pilot's voice reached a place inside her she thought had gone silent forever. She tried to focus on the papers in front of her. She couldn't. Every alarm echoing through the speakers sounded painfully familiar. Every radio transmission pulled her back to the cockpit she had spent years trying to forget. Then another transmission shattered the silence. The pilot's breathing had become faster. His confidence was disappearing. "Control, I've never practiced a real dead-stick landing in an actual emergency. I'm running out of altitude. Somebody, please tell me what to do." The operations room filled with tension. Controllers searched manuals. Supervisors searched radar. But no one had the experience to guide a powerless fighter safely back to Earth. No one. Until the terrified pilot suddenly remembered a story his instructor had once told him, a story about a legendary pilot whose impossible emergency landings had become military folklore. And with hope fading fast, he reached for the radio one more time. The emergency frequency went silent for only a second. Then the pilot's voice returned, louder, rougher, and filled with desperation. "Does anyone here know call sign Phantom?" No one answered. The controllers looked at one another in confusion. Some frowned. Others searched the list of active pilots on their monitors. There was no Phantom. The young controller pressed the transmit button again. "Falcon 2. Repeat the name. We don't have anyone by that call sign assigned to this base." The reply came instantly. "My instructor told me if I ever lost both engines and had no way out, there was one pilot who could talk anyone safely back to the ground. He said if Phantom was still alive, find her. Please, somebody find Phantom." The room became eerily quiet. Even the constant clicking of keyboards stopped. To the younger officers, it sounded like the pilot was asking for someone who existed only in old military stories. But across the hallway, a chair scraped sharply against the floor. Lena Carter slowly stood. The pen slipped from her hand. The reports on her desk no longer mattered. For years, she had trained herself to ignore memories of the cockpit. For years, she had convinced herself that chapter of her life was over, yet hearing that forgotten call sign spoken aloud shattered every wall she had built around her past. Her breathing slowed. Her expression changed. The gentle office worker everyone knew disappeared. Standing in her place was someone entirely different. Her eyes became focused. Her shoulders straightened. The quiet uncertainty vanished, replaced by the calm confidence of someone who had stared death in the face more than once and survived. A young technician noticed her first. "Ms. Carter, are you okay?" She didn't answer. She walked toward the operations room with steady, purposeful steps. People instinctively moved out of her way without knowing why. Something about her presence demanded it. Inside the control room, panic was growing. Ryan was flipping frantically through emergency procedures while another controller calculated impossible glide distances. The supervisor kept staring at the radar screen, watching the fighter lose precious altitude. Every passing second reduced the pilot's chances. The aircraft had already dropped thousands of feet. There wasn't much time left. Then the control room door opened. Everyone turned. The quiet woman from the records office stood in the doorway. Without raising her voice, she spoke with an authority that instantly filled the room. "Give me the headset." Ryan blinked in disbelief. "Ma'am, this is a live emergency. I can't hand over military communications." She took another step forward. Her voice remained calm, but this time it carried the unmistakable tone of someone who had spent years giving life or death orders. I said, "Give me the headset." The room fell silent again. The base commander looked into her eyes. For a brief moment, memories from decades earlier rushed back, old mission reports, stories from veteran pilots, and whispered conversations about a woman whose emergency flying skills had become the stuff of legend. He had never believed those stories, until now. Without taking his eyes off her, he quietly nodded. "Give it to her." Ryan hesitated for only a heartbeat before placing the headset into Lena's hands. As she slipped it over her ears, the frightened pilot's breathing echoed through the speakers. He had no idea that the legend he had begged for had finally answered the call. Lena placed the headset over her ears and closed her eyes for a brief second. The noise in the control room disappeared. The frightened voices, the flashing radar screens, the officers rushing around. None of it mattered anymore. In her mind, she was back inside a fighter cockpit thousands of feet above the earth, where every decision meant the difference between life and death. She pressed the transmit button. Her voice came through the radio calm, firm, and completely fearless. "Falcon 2. This is call sign Phantom. I'm with you now." For a moment, there was only silence. Then the young pilot answered, and the fear in his voice suddenly changed to hope. "Phantom? You're real?" "I'm very real, Lieutenant," she replied. "And as long as you keep listening to me, you're going home today." The entire control room stared at her. No one spoke. No one even breathed loudly. The legendary Phantom wasn't a myth after all. She had been working only a few rooms away this entire time. Lena glanced at the radar display only once before making calculations in her head. Years of experience returned instantly. She didn't need a computer. She didn't need a checklist. She trusted the instincts that had once made her one of the finest pilots in the Air Force. "Report your altitude, airspeed, and distance from the runway." The pilot answered quickly. 8,900 feet, holding 205 knots, about 11 miles from the base. Lena's eyes narrowed. It wasn't impossible, but it would require perfection. One mistake, one unnecessary turn, one moment of panic, and the aircraft would never reach the runway. She spoke slowly, so every word settled into the pilot's mind. "Listen carefully. Your engines are gone, but your aircraft is still flying. Right now, it's no longer a jet. It's a glider. The moment you panic, you lose control. So from this point forward, you're going to stay calm and follow my instructions exactly." The pilot swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Lower the nose just a little. Don't chase altitude, you've already lost it. Protect your airspeed. Hold 200 knots as steadily as you can. Smooth hands. No sudden movements." The stick moved gently inside the cockpit. The fighter immediately became more stable. "That's it," Lena said. "Feel what the aircraft wants to do. Don't fight it. Let it fly." For the first time since the emergency began, the pilot's breathing slowed. Around the operations center, officers exchanged stunned glances. They had spent the last several minutes reading emergency procedures from thick manuals. Lena had solved more problems in 60 seconds than the manuals had in 10 minutes. She continued issuing calm, precise instructions. "Turn left, only 4 degrees. That's all. Every sharp turn steals altitude you cannot afford to lose. Turning left, 4 degrees. Excellent. Now hold it there." The radar operator watched the aircraft's path straighten toward the runway. His eyes widened. It's lining up," another controller whispered, almost unable to believe it. "She's doing all of this in her head." Lena never looked away from the radar. Every altitude report, every knot of airspeed, every mile remaining. She calculated them faster than the computers beside her. The room finally understood why older pilots had spoken her name with so much respect. She wasn't simply giving advice. She was flying that powerless fighter from the ground. And for the first time since the emergency began, everyone inside the control room believed the impossible might actually happen. The fighter was still falling. Every second, the ground looked closer through Lieutenant Noah Brooks's cockpit canopy. The runway was somewhere ahead, but from his altitude, it looked impossibly far away. His engines were silent. The only sound inside the cockpit was the rush of wind and the relentless warning alarms reminding him that time was running out. Inside the operations center, nobody dared to speak. Every eye was locked on the radar screen. Every heartbeat seemed to match the aircraft's steady descent. Lena never looked nervous. She leaned slightly over the console, her voice as calm as if she were conducting an ordinary training flight. "Report," Noah answered immediately. "Altitude, 7,000 feet. Lena nodded. "Good. Hold 200 knots. Don't chase the runway. Let the runway come to you." Another controller quietly whispered to the commander. "He's still too far out." The commander didn't reply. He simply kept watching Lena. She hadn't shown the slightest sign of doubt. Then another transmission came through. This time, panic had returned. "Phantom, I'm losing altitude faster than I expected. I don't think I'm going to make it." Lena's answer came instantly. Not loud, not angry, just absolute confidence. "You're looking at the wrong problem." Noah frowned. "Ma'am, stop worrying about where you'll be in 3 minutes. Fly the airplane you're sitting in right now. 1 second, one decision, one correction at a time." Her words cut straight through his fear. His breathing steadied again. His hands relaxed on the controls. Outside, strong crosswinds suddenly swept across the valley. The fighter rolled unexpectedly to the right. The cockpit shook. Warning tones echoed again. "Crosswind!" Noah shouted. "It's pushing me off course." Several controllers instinctively gasped. One sharp correction now could bleed away the little altitude he had left. Lena reacted before anyone else could speak. "Do not fight the wind." Noah hesitated. "But it's moving me away from final approach." "I know exactly what it's doing," she answered calmly. "If you force the aircraft back now, you'll waste precious energy. Let the wind carry you for a moment. Then ease back. Smooth inputs. The airplane still wants to fly. Trust it." He followed her instructions. The violent roll settled. The aircraft stabilized once again. A radar technician looked up in disbelief. She predicted the drift before it even happened. Lena ignored the comment. Her focus never left the pilot. Altitude, 5,800 feet. She made another rapid calculation. Closer, but still no room for mistakes. "You're doing exactly what you should. Keep your speed steady, small corrections only." Minutes felt like hours. Every report tightened the tension inside the room. 4,900. 4,000. 3,400. The runway was finally visible through Noah's windshield, yet it still seemed painfully distant. His confidence cracked again. "Phantom, I'm coming in too low. I swear I'm not going to reach it." This time Lena's voice became firmer than ever. "Listen to me, Noah." The entire room turned toward her. "You're not flying alone anymore." A brief silence followed. Then she continued. Years ago, I sat where you're sitting now. My aircraft was damaged. My future disappeared in front of my eyes. I survived because I trusted my training instead of my fear. Today, you're going to do the same. Noah closed his eyes for one brief second. When he opened them again, the panic was gone. Only determination remained. He tightened his grip on the controls. I'm with you, Phantom. Lena looked at the descending radar symbol and gave the next instruction. The runway was finally within reach. Now came the most dangerous part of the entire flight. One wrong move, and everything they had fought for would be lost in a single heartbeat.